to a fantastic lady, in fact, from a family that are superbly well known. That's not a good word to use, but you know what I mean. Huge in this country. Your dad is, of course, Slim Dusty.
That's right, yeah.
How did it feel for you? Because your mum is a McKeon sister, Reg Lindsay's married to one of the McKeon sisters, so you've got Reg as your uncle, and so it goes on. How does it feel to come out of a family with such a background?
Well, the thing is, it sets a really high quality control on what you're doing. Yeah. It's really something to live up to. But of course, it's just been sort of a way of life for me, really, because I started travelling when I was about 2, and even when I started school and whatnot, I always went back and worked on the show during holidays, right through sort of school, uni, whatever, you know. And so it's been a real way of life for me, so much so that I can't imagine that I would have gone into anything else. It's just like having parents that maybe work in the bank. I guess they would have ended up in the bank, but they happen to be both in the entertainment business, and I've sort of, it's just become fairly natural for me, really.
You still did uni, though, so his idea was it to do that, and did you have an idea to maybe go another way outside of music?
Well, it was my idea to do that, mainly because I didn't know what else I was going to do at that particular stage in time, and I didn't feel that I wanted to go into music professionally. But when the 3 years of uni finished, I just couldn't imagine really doing anything else but going back into music. It seemed the most natural thing to do.
So what did you do at uni? You majored in one, didn't you?
Biological sciences. Yeah.
Which would have led you where? Veterinary side or doctors?
No, I probably would have worked in laboratories, in research, or just straight laboratory work of some sort in hospitals or whatnot, something like that. Because I didn't specialise, I only did the 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably what happened.
A little more exciting where you are today.
Yeah, I'll say. I'm enjoying it much more.
Can you remember the very first time that you ever, not necessarily appeared, but walked on stage? And can you tell us when that was? And what
Yes, I can. It was when I was 10.
Yeah.
And at that stage, Dad had a gold 78 for the pub with no beer.
Right.
And just before he'd come on for his main spot, someone had sort of walk on with this and paraded across the stage. And so that was my first appearance on stage. I sort of walked across with this, and that was it, you know.
In those days, did you travel all the shows with Dad?
I travelled with them full time until I was school age, and then after that I stayed home with grandparents. I did do a couple of years full-time touring when I was about 9 and 10, and then after that it was just sort of holidays. I go back and work.
Can you remember good things out of that period, or bad things, some of the real bad times? Were there hard times?
Well, the hardest thing I think was we were a very close family, and of course it was very hard. Sort of, you'd fly up for the holidays and work on the show, and that was all very exciting and whatnot, and it was very hard leaving, of course. But of course, during my childhood, I mean, I've been to every state in Australia, I've travelled all over Australia, I've had a fantastic childhood, you know. I couldn't really, well, it's been pretty exciting.
You didn't get, like, bogged out back, or, you know, run into the odd bull or something on the road late at night and smash the truck up or anything?
Oh, yes, that's happened up, and he ran into a bullock. It was in the top of Western Australia, actually. Drives a sort of purple Fairlane, and I can remember it was, we just sort of, it was a backtrack, I think, and yeah, this bullock sort of just came out and ended up sort of on the bonnet and then off. Didn't smash the windscreen or anything, but did a lot of sort of damage to the front of the car.
And a bit of screaming.
Yes, yes, it was a bit
hairy.
Yeah, a bit hairy.
You decided then, okay, I'll go solo after the uni thing. That would have been how many years ago?
Oh, well, actually, that was at the end of '73. I decided then, right, to go into the music, and I toured with the Slim Dusty show for about a couple of years. And then I decided I wanted to sort of work away from the family, and I joined a club band called Flinders, and we used to work around the clubs. I read for RSL every Sunday night, actually, which was really exciting.
Really?
Oh, it was great, yeah.
Was that a big change to you? To be,
yeah, it was. I was just doing a bit of everything in this particular band. I was doing some lead singing, some backup singing, playing a little bit of bass, a bit of piano, and it was great. Really good experience for me.
How many instruments do you play?
Well, I'm playing rhythm guitar at the moment. My mother taught me how to play bass, and I was playing bass in the show earlier on and on some of Dad's albums, but then I was superseded after a while. I was a very straight bass player, and I was superseded. But and I learnt classical piano, so I sort of that's good for sort of working out songs, and that I find I can work better on piano than guitar.
It's one hell of a grounding, isn't it? With all that musical background and plus going through uni.
Yeah,
you do just about anything these days you like.
Well,
you think you'll ever get out of the music business, or do you think you're here to stay now?
No, I think I think I'll stay in it. You know, to what degree I don't know. Right. I mean, I'm fairly tied up with family commitments as well. I've got a 1-year-old daughter now, and I'm very committed to her and my family. Kate.
Katie.
Yes, Katie.
Right.
And but see, I was out of the scene for a couple of years, and I've only just got back into it about the last year or so, really.
With the band, you're working with your dad's band at the moment?
At the moment, I'm working with my father's band, yes, because he's off the road. He's had a throat operation.
Can we ask, and I should have done it earlier,
yes.
How is he? How in the hell is he?
He's recovering slowly. It's taking longer than they thought. Apparently the polyp they removed was a bit larger than they thought, so it's just been taking longer to heal. Plus it's been compounded with some allergy reactions, which are making things a bit difficult, but he's getting better, you know, so and he'll be back on the road.
Good. He will be
definitely.
again in future.
Oh,
Great.
yes.
You will. You actually went down a couple of weeks ago and did a fill-in spot for him, and you had to learn all his songs. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. It was the first time a country artist had been asked to appear at the Festival of Arts in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And of course, Dad had to cancel out. And so they said, well, is there some way you can present something or other? So the band and myself, plus Mum, presented a night of Slim Dusty music. So I was doing the bulk of it. So I was singing sort of Duncan and The Pub and Sweeney. And actually it was great, all these old bush ballads that I sort of knew verses and choruses of. I'd heard him singing them when I was a kid, you know, and I sort of learnt them all up, and I really enjoyed it.
Put them all together.
It was great.
Worked, eh?
Yeah.
You've done a lot of other things just of late and over the years, and we'll come back and talk more about that a little later. You know, of course, the redneck, the outlaw, Dave Dawson.
Yes, he's coming on.
We'll have him on a little later. And also Kamahl, so you get to meet those,
really
and we'll chat as we go, eh?
Okay.
Let's have a look at a couple of songs. All he did was Tell Me Lies, which is one of yours, from what, how many?
78 it was
78?
released. Yes.
Okay, and then we'll follow that with something that's totally different, Led Zeppelin, a rare bit of footage.
Quite a
Stay in with us. We got to walk and don't look back. Dave Dawson, rebel, redneck, Ned Kelly of rock and country journalism in Australia. Welcome.
Thanks, mate. It really sounds great. I wish I was there.
After that, you of course know Anne, right?
Yeah, I've admired Anne for, well, 10 years. It's sort of one of those things where you see very few top-class female artists in Australia, and of course Anne's been at the top for so long that you tend to forget the others, because she is really, you know, the best. You
also had an experience with the Rolling Stones, and while that clip was on, we were talking about it. Relive that chat, will you? And tell us what happened there. When did you last meet the Rolling Stones?
Oh, that was '74 in Melbourne. We'd been to a party which WA Records threw for them, I think, at, or EMI. One of the companies threw for them at Montsalvat, the artist colony, and Jenny Brown, who was a very prominent rock journalist, had a party at her place, and her mother threw her North Balwyn house open, and of course she also threw the pool open, so we thought that rather than be last into the pool, we dived in first. And then on Monday I read the story in the paper which said Rolling Stones at nude pool party.
You were first in.
And the sporting editor was second.
That's bad, beating the sporting editor, I tell you.
He was younger than me, so I had to beat him.
What is your first love? Rock or country? Because you write about both in Sydney papers and Melbourne papers.
I like country probably more so now than I did when I was younger, because I think the quality of country music has improved considerably. You have a lot of young artists coming along, especially in Australia. There's people who have come along even since Anne was at the top. There's people like Denise Morrison and Donna Fisk and Karen Johns from Digger Revell's band. And in Melbourne, of course, there's people coming up all the time. And it's really great that the Australian country scene is now really maturing with, of course, a lot of kick-ons from America.
Melbourne is like a hub of country at the moment, isn't it? It's got a couple of big hits down there that are country in flavour, and it seems that that's a bit stronger than Sydney.
Yeah, people like Rodney Crowell and Elvis Costello, their country songs are much bigger on the Melbourne charts than they are here in Sydney. I think Melbourne, the people between the rock and the country scene seem to mix a lot more. Up here, there tends to be a big separation point where the rock musicians say it's uncool to go to country venues. Like, you don't see all that many rock musicians at the Lone Star Cafe, but in Melbourne you'll see rock musicians one night at a country venue and the next night at a rock venue, and I think the country musicians are the same in Melbourne. They'll go to the Renown to see the Dead Livers, and then the next night they'll be seeing Broderick Smith.
You had to get the Dead Livers in, didn't you? There's got to be a way that he gets the Dead Livers in. Are they your favourite country band in Australia?
I think they write the best local material of the country bands. They're obviously very much in touch with what's happening now, because they write songs like Holy Mary, which is about driving down the ocean road in Victoria, and there's another one called Hard Doing Ken, which is about a guy who gets loaded up on Corio at the Station Hotel in Prahran, which is in fact a rock venue. Then he does a bank robbery in North Fitzroy and stalls the getaway car and gets a slug in the back of his head. He stopped a bullet from the 38. I mean, that type of thing the kids of today can identify with, whereas a lot of the bush music, I think the kids had at school, like we grew up and we were taught all about Australian history, and I think now a lot of the people, especially those who have moved from the farms into the city, identify a lot more with bands like Saltbush, Grand Junction, the Dead Livers, and so on, because they're writing about things that are happening now rather than things that happened in the past.
Getting away from that, I know one thing, you were born down in Victoria, not here in New South Wales, on a farm, so it's a fairly good background for a person to come up and like country music. You didn't know that Anne went to school in Victoria, not far from you.
No, it was only 300 miles away. We could have snuck out at night and met each other.
In the country, mate, yes. Should have been over there with your flagon or your flask very quickly, eh?
Yeah, the ute, yeah, they're wonderful.
Those people that you toured with when you went to America, Willie Nelson, I think, was one, and there were others. Tell us who they were and explain a little bit about them, will you?
Well, David Owen Coe, I first saw in Louisville, Kentucky.
Cue for it. Ta-da!
Well, David Owen Coe was a guy who learned to write country songs. He was in jail for some time, and he used to do Christmas rhymes, Christmas cards in his cell, and of course, oh yeah, that's him. That's not a Christmas course, that's one of his porno albums.
But on the back here it says hello to Dave Dawson. Don't know which one.
Dave Dawson, Melbourne Truth Australia. What's
That's it, yes.
Oh, that must be the Rolling Stones part.
So tell us about him. He's a crazy character. Been in jail?
Oh, yeah, he went to jail, I think, once for smuggling pornography across the state lines in his duffel coat. He was probably going to a Peter, Paul and Mary concert. But no, he's a real character. He came up the hard way, sort of a split family, broken home, the usual things you hear in the courts. But in fact, he went to jail, and rather than sort of, you know, just waste away in not Margaritaville but jail, he actually wrote songs in jail and wrote rhymes for cards. And when he got out, he went to Nashville, and his greatest stunt, or his first greatest stunt, was when he parked his hearse outside the Grand Ole Opry and used to play his guitar on the bonnet of it as people went in to see the heroes like Ernest Tubb and Minnie Pearl and people like that. And he really was outrageous, and of course over the years he got a reputation for his he always carries about 3 wives. At one stage when he was very affluent, he had 7 wives, 7 Cadillacs.
Poor devil.
And God knows how many children. Actually, he's a Mormon, so God probably wouldn't know.
So what about Willie Nelson now? You've travelled with Willie on the road.
Yeah, I went to New Zealand with Willie. Actually, I was saying to my friend Kamahl before, who lent me a shirt tonight, that...
oh, lovely.
That because Kamahl played at this country festival in Melbourne where the bikies apparently took a dislike to the heat, couldn't have been Kamahl, and started fighting amongst themselves. And I said to Kamahl, well, the same thing happened in New Zealand when I went to see Willie, because at Auckland, there's a Samoan bikie gang called the Headhunters started throwing beer mugs at Don Bowman, who was Willie's opening act, and Willie, of course, being a peace-loving chap, had the Hells Angels backstage with him as special guests, and being good Samaritans from the day of Hunter S. Thompson, they decided the only way to stop this brawl was to go in there and beat up the Samoan bikies, the Headhunters. Unfortunately, the brawl escalated. Don Bowman, who used to compare American Country Countdown...
Yeah, I saw him on the live thing, right?
Well, he didn't know how to handle it, so Willie came out and said a prayer and sang Whiskey River, and everything quietened down, but not before several bikies were taken to hospital on stretchers, and of course it made the front page of the Sydney Daily Telegraph and various other papers throughout the world. Apparently
the same thing happened with Kamahl, but he's quietened them down. After the first song, they were all singing along with him. He's saying he'll be on a little later. Anyhow, we'll get and chat with that. What about Anne's records? Are there any songs that you would like Anne to play, because it just happens to have the guitar with her?
Well, there's one really... There's a great new song on Anne's new album, which of course is very overdue, and it's an old Jimmy Rogers song.
Which is titled?
Right, Waiting for a Train.
Waiting for a Train. You have a new single around too. As you pick up the guitar, tell us about that.
Yes.
It's called?
The single's been out about 2 weeks now. It's called Fool's Gold Ring, but the album won't be out till about June.
Good luck with the single, and
Thank
this
you.
is Waiting for a Train off the album.
Okay.
And Kirkpatrick.
All around the water tank, just waiting for a train, 1,000 big man just to give him a line of talk. I said, if you've got money, I'll see that you don't walk. I haven't got a nickel, not a penny can I show. I'll get off, you railroad bum. And he slammed the boxcar door. Well, he put me off in Texas. It's a place I dearly love. All the wide open spaces all around me, all the moon and stars above. Oh, nobody seems to want me or to lend me a helping hand. I'm on my way from Frisco, going back to Dixieland. Well, my pocketbook is empty and my heart is full of pain. Well, I'm 1,000 miles away from home, just waiting for a train. I can't do the yodel. No.
No yodels?
No yodels.
All right, Dylan, thank you. And Kirkpatrick, there's not a whole heap of people here to clap, but I'm sure they're doing it at home. You love Rodney Crowell, who is married
To Roseanne Cash, yes. Roseanne, of course, is one of Johnny Cash's daughters. She's probably the best of the daughters as far as songwriting goes, and she certainly chose a great producer in Rodney Crowell, and also a great husband. And
what I love about you is the way you make statements. So I've got a couple of letters here from people who've complained about those.
Fan club.
I'll come back in just a while, but let's have a look at Rodney, and then we'll have a look at Cheap Trick, which is a cheap trick at any time.
We'll bring those letters out to Cheap Trick.
Yeah, we'll have a look at these letters after that. Somebody Loves You. That is the title track of the album and also the current single for Kamahl, who is our special guest on After Dark, and Kirkpatrick, Kamahl.
Nice to be with you.
And the redneck.
What do I say? Good morning.
What do you want to say to him? Hello, David?
The shirt, I didn't give it to you.
You were listening. We thought we'd get away with it. Did he autograph it?
He autographed it in the backstage room.
It's all right. It's a different colour. So I usually choose lighter colours than that.
What really did happen in Victoria with that?
It was all Ant's dad's fault, you know?
Slim.
Yeah, he was supposed to be there. And Bill Gates, who's the program manager for 3UZ, rang my office and said if I would do a show. And then he told me about 2 weeks before the actual event, the reason he had asked me, because he said that Slim Dusty was actually contracted to do the show, and he had said yes, but then last minute there were some sort of problems with throat, yes, and he couldn't do it, so they asked me. And later on I found out that it was meant to be a country music
one hell of a
festival.
selection, isn't it?
and then they changed the word to say it was a county festival.
Oh, dropped an R.
To sort of to smooth it over. But it's true what they were saying. There was a bit of a fight. And it was a terrifying experience for the first 20 or 30 seconds because there was a terrible punch-up. And I saw a man being hit for real. And he just stood there and then just fell down and he just stayed there for several minutes. And eventually some of the St. John's ambulance people just carried him out. And at the end of the show, an hour later, he was still unconscious. So God only knows what happened to him afterwards.
So he wasn't one of the guys that came in and sang along with you after the first number?
No. It was the most weird mixture of audience I've ever seen in my life. They had grandmothers and great-grandchildren, and they had bikies, for want of a better word. I don't mean it disrespectfully, because in case I mean
Please.
but it was an unusual experience. And I have something to get even with your dad about that.
There's another thing, and we might try and sort this out very briefly. I rang Polygram today. They said you're the biggest record seller for Polygram. I rang EMI. They said your dad was the biggest seller for them. Neither knows, and neither is game to say which is larger at this stage. And I rang the Kent Music Report to find out why they don't chart you when your records sell. And David said, well, he checks around the record companies, and a lot of the people that report back to him obviously regard you in a broader spectrum, like Slim Dusty. He said exactly that before I'd mentioned this thing. And he said, so sometimes we don't get the report, but yes, you both sell heaps of records, but they don't always chart them, other than Duncan's was charted, and of course, Pub with No Beer. So it's like he had never done a count, so he couldn't tell me. Nobody really knows, but you're obviously in one of the top 2 record sellers.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Slim has been recording, what, for 25 years now?
You had a start on you.
Yeah, at least, or maybe 30,
yeah.
you know, yeah.
But I started recording in 1967, 68, and I've done 21 albums. And perhaps this slight, you know, if you're talking about just units, my records do sell in Scandinavia, in England, in New Zealand.
So there's outside.
So if you take units, it might be more. Perhaps, you know, we miss the fundamental point. I think all that really matters in the long run is whether people respond to what you're providing.
Which they do, sales-wise.
And if we can digress a little bit, I felt terribly sort of concerned when, like, for example, last year and the year before, they had a Royal Command performance. Obvious, you know, always it's a selected few who get to appear on those shows. And I really felt that somebody ought to invite
Slim,
Anne's father to represent, because to me he is more Australia than any other performer that I know, because he's synonymous with what is truly Australian, you know.
Right. To take it away just a shade from there, and obviously you'll understand this, into the club area, which your dad doesn't do a whole lot of. He's more out back. So let's get to the Mo Awards. You have never been nominated for a Mo Award. There's a guy who sells like more records than anyone else in the country, performs to big clubs full of people, and they don't nominate you for an award. Why not?
But even if I may digress a little bit there, it's more than clubs. I do concerts. In fact, I've just finished a 4.5-week tour of Victoria and Tasmania. And this is my 11th year of doing concerts around that part of the world. In fact, I do it around Australia. And we still seem to get full houses and what have you. And
you don't get a nomination.
Pardon?
Why?
The persons best qualified to answer that question are those people who form the committee of the Mo Awards and find out what it is that, what are the prerequisites to get a Mo Award. Do you have to be able to entertain the people in the media or the public? It's the public who eventually decides whether they want to come and see you or not.
Yeah. I'll go one further. There's a thing happening in Expo overseas that I read about yesterday with Cole Joy and a few of the boys going, and I think Julie Anthony. Have you been invited to go and represent Australia?
Not to my knowledge. I'm going to America, in fact, within 48 hours of this program. I'm going to New Zealand and then to Hawaii. In fact, I'm doing the Los Angeles Variety Club telethon. I've been asked to be in the opening segment, the middle segment, and the closing segment, which is a tremendous compliment.
Which only gives you time to go to the toilet,
you know,
obviously.
yes, just about. I'm going back to New York, to the Waldorf Astoria, to do a performance there on the 25th of April. To me, perhaps those are the things that I cherish a little more than some of the awards that are not given.
But it must bug you.
In a way it does. It does, not for me personally, from the point of view of my fans or audiences who come. I think they'd like to think that their friend, their artist, was recognized by other people as well. I think it would be nice. But I would be really interested, for your sake and mine, from the people who form the committee or the board of directors of the Mo Awards, what is it they actually look for in an artist or artists to get an award?
It's an
then we'll
one.
both know. Well,
let us kick it around the table as we have a look at a song by Mental as Anything, all right? Dave's bound to have an idea or two here, come on. Let's go to Mental as Anything.
I don't know, I like it.
Will you stay in for a while?
All right, I'll stay
Love
in.
his shirts, they're just the wrong colour. It's all right. Mental as Anything. Just quickly, we're going to highlight a group here.
You are?
If that's okay.
Before going any further, I must apologize for what I did at your Christmas party.
Oh, I loved it. Leave me alone.
People misunderstood. Somebody, was it you, Don, Dave, who wrote the article?
Do things
Wouldn't be me, mate. All my
He
stories
said
are
Can we explain that after we have a highlight of this group?
No, I want to explain it now.
Go on, real quick then.
Somebody claimed that I had crashed into your party, your Christmas party.
You did not. You were invited guest, right?
That I wasted the beautiful champagne on your head.
Which was a waste.
No, it wasn't. It added spice, or it added life to the party, didn't it?
It was a wonderful
And you
Christmas
invited
party.
me, didn't you?
My word,
That's
and
why
I invite
I'm
you
here
again this year, please.
I didn't get crashed this time, did I?
Oh, no, certainly not.
Right.
We spent about a week getting here.